The lights dimmed, and the studio buzzed with the kind of anticipation usually reserved for championship fights or historic political moments. But this wasn't a typical debate. It was a collision of two cultural powerhouses, each commanding millions, each representing a radically different vision for America's future. On one side, Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, a 27-year-old conservative firebrand known for her laser focus, devastating debate skills, and unflinching loyalty to the America First agenda. On the other, Taylor Swift, the most influential pop icon of her generation. Fresh off a record-breaking world tour, she was stepping into the political arena not as a politician, but as a voice for millions of young women, climate activists, and justice seekers across the globe. The topic: women's rights, climate change, misinformation. As the host introduced them, applause thundered across the studio. Swift's fans, Swifties, held up hand-painted signs. Leavitt's supporters sat in suits and MAGA hats, clapping with practiced confidence. The camera zoomed in, a beat of silence. Then it began. Swift spoke first, graceful, calm, and composed. She shared stories. A single mother who couldn't access healthcare. A 14-year-old fan who wrote her a letter about depression and body image. Her voice trembled slightly, but her gaze remained steady. "I'm not a politician," she said softly, "but I know what it means to feel invisible in a system that was never built for you." The crowd cheered. Then came Leavitt. "Taylor, I admire your storytelling," she said, smiling politely, "but women don't need verses. We need victories." A silence fell. Then, before the pandemic, under President Trump, we saw the lowest female unemployment rate in 65 years. That wasn't magic, that was policy. Data-driven, targeted, and real. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. A murmur rippled through the audience. Swift nodded slowly, searching for a response. Policy matters, but culture matters too. Role models matter. Leavitt leaned in. Role models lead with facts, not just feelings. The first round had ended, and already the crowd wasn't sure who was winning, only that this wasn't going to be a friendly celebrity interview. The atmosphere in the studio shifted. What had started as a symbolic debate between culture and politics was quickly turning into something far more combustible. The second round, misinformation and climate change, was where things truly exploded. This wasn't just a clash of ideas anymore. It was a battle for the narrative itself. The moderator cleared his throat. "Our next topic, misinformation in the digital age." Swift leaned forward, her elbows resting gently on the edge of the table. There was a fire in her voice this time, less delicate, more resolute. "We're living in a time when facts are manipulated, headlines are weaponized, and millions are misled daily," she said. "And too many leaders on both sides are playing into that for power. It's not just dangerous, it's destructive." The audience cheered, louder this time. She had struck a universal chord. There are kids out there who trust what they see on social media because no one taught them to question it. There are people losing family members because they didn't trust doctors. And some of those doubts were seeded by leaders they believed in. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. But Caroline knew exactly what was coming, and she smiled. "You're absolutely right, Taylor," Leavitt began, her voice calm and confident. "Misinformation is a poison, but let's be honest about where it spreads." She reached into her stack of mositonitos. "You once posted, then deleted, a claim that U.S. corporations were responsible for the majority of global deforestation. But that data was from a flawed 2011 report that had already been debunked by the UN. A sudden audible shift in the room. Swift blinked. "I corrected it as soon as I saw it. That's what responsible people do." Leavitt didn't flinch. "Correcting mistakes is good," she said crisply. "Preventing them is leadership." The words landed like a slap, not shouted, not exaggerated, just sharp enough to cut deep. "And," Leavitt added, "when you have 200 million followers, correcting something quietly doesn't undo the damage. You shape opinions, Taylor. You're not just a singer anymore, you're a movement, and movements must be accountable." Swift paused. You could see her trying to pivot, but the momentum was slipping. The audience was tense now, divided. You could almost feel the ideological lines hardening between rows. The moderator raised his hand again. Let's move to our next issue, climate change. This was Swift's stronghold. She launched in, this time with real emotion, describing the infernos in California, the floods in the Midwest, the fans she'd met in drought-ravaged towns. Her words were visceral. She painted pictures with her voice. I've walked through ash where homes used to be, she said. I've spoken to farmers who watched their livelihoods disappear in a single storm. This was where Taylor Swift soared. She didn't need statistics. She had lived experience, connection, and metaphor. But Leavitt wasn't here to be moved. She was here to counter. When Swift mentioned the Green New Deal, Leavitt stepped in. I'm glad you brought that up, she said, because the Green New Deal, despite its beautiful intentions, could raise the average family's electricity bill by 30%. According to the American Energy Institute, that's not an estimate, it's a near certainty. Swift looked stunned. But if we don't act, we won't have a future to pay bills in. Leavitt nodded, then delivered her most cutting line of the night. Working-class Americans can't feed their kids with poetry about tomorrow. They need policy today. The studio erupted. Cheers, gasps, even some boos. The energy was volatile now. A collision of belief systems, both personal and political. Swift took a breath. I'm not trying to be poetic, she replied. I'm trying to be human. That one line landed well, enough to remind everyone of why she was there. But it wasn't enough to undo the technical precision of Leavitt's blows. Leavitt, meanwhile, maintained her composure. She was relentless but never cruel. Her demeanor said, I respect your heart, but I will not let it override reason. That was the battle playing out, heart versus head, emotion versus execution. And in that moment, millions watching at home weren't just choosing between two women, they were choosing between two Americas. The final segment began with a shift in tone. The moderator, sensing the emotional weight in the room, glanced at the camera and announced, for our final portion, we've invited members of the audience and viewers at home to ask questions directly. This debate isn't just about two voices on a stage. It's about the millions watching who will shape the future. The lights dimmed slightly, and the massive digital screen behind the stage flickered to life. A young woman appeared via a live stream. Early 20s, wearing a college sweatshirt, eyes wide with nerves but filled with admiration. Her voice trembled. Hi, Taylor. I just wanted to say, your music has helped me through the hardest times of my life. And I guess my question is, with everything going on in the world, how do we stay hopeful? How do we find unity when everyone's fighting? There was a pause. Even Leavitt turned to Swift, waiting. Taylor didn't hesitate. She stood gently and stepped forward, no longer speaking from a podium, but from the heart. I've thought about that question every single day, she began, her voice soft but unwavering. And the truth is, we don't fix division overnight. But music, stories, kindness, they open the door. They remind us that beneath all the noise, we're still human. Her tone rose. I've met people I disagreed with. And you know what? Some of them became friends. Because we listened. Because we cared more about understanding than winning. For the first time all night, the entire audience, left and right, was silent. Then, applause. From all sides. Not thunderous, but respectful. A shared moment. A glimmer of unity. But Leavitt wasn't done. She waited for the claps to fade, then stepped to the center. What you just said, she said to Swift, was beautiful and true. A flicker of surprise crossed Swift's face. But, Leavitt continued, there's one more thing we need. Beyond hope, beyond inspiration. We need action. She turned to the audience. Unity isn't just about feelings. It's about function. It's about putting policies in place that make life better for everyone. Not just those who can afford to go to a concert or post hashtags. Now she faced the camera. If we want unity, we start with safety, strong schools, and a government that works. Not trending topics, not award speeches, not celebrity endorsements. She paused. Hope is powerful, but without structure, it's just a song. The crowd went silent again. Then, an eruption. Cheers, whistles, applause. Some stood up. Even a few Swift fans nodded, slowly, reluctantly. Not out of defeat, but out of recognition. The power of the argument had landed. The debate ended not with a handshake, but with two women standing on stage, side by side. Opposing forces, representing two Americas, one based on dreams, the other on decisions.